If everybody's ready, we will start this evening's joint committee. We're constituting a joint committee meeting.
Why is it going to
So we're unable to live stream at this stage, so it'll be put straight back up onto the Zoom attachment. So welcome everybody, members, guests, those joining online. Good to see everybody back here on this brisk grey morning. It's just as brisk in Hokitika, so most mornings. Thank you everybody for making yourselves available today. Apologies.
We have one from Mayor Chris Russell, who's unwell.
Thank you. Do we know if Kai Whakahiri Matrick is?
No idea.
So at this stage we'll put him down for, we won't put him down as apology, we'll just put him down for potentially arriving back. So can I have somebody please move and second that the apology for, thank you, Mayor Gibson. Seconder, please, for that apology. Thank you. Chair Smith. All in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Right, confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting held on 18th of May 2026. Are there any comments or matters arising from those minutes? No. Can I have a movement and seconder, please, to thank you, Mayor Gibson. Seconded by Chief Smith when he's just checked. Thank you. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Right, third on the agenda for today is the chair report, and we hand over to CE Simon Beckford for that, please. Thanks, Simon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we had a really productive meeting. This was the meeting that we held on the 20th of August a few weeks ago. So it was a very productive meeting, good attendance from all membership, which was very welcome. Just acknowledging it's an incredibly busy time for all the membership at the moment. There's so much going on in this sector. Many of the items that we discussed are on the agenda today, so I won't go into them in depth. We did have a good discussion about the budget for the 26-27 year, and a summary of which is included in Claire's update. Obviously, the councils are all in the midst of LTP planning now, and KEG will be holding a September workshop looking at adequate provision for emergency management across the coast, including the local share from those TAs. Obviously, there's a lot of change coming from the emergency management bill, and the consequences of that in terms of financials will have to be built into our long-term plan as we move forward. We'll bring a report back to Joint Committee at the next meeting in November. We had a long discussion about the work programme. So at the Joint Committee last in May, I think it was, we did bring forward a work programme, and each of those had we went away and said we would look at a project plan for each of those activity areas. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to progress that as quickly as we would have liked. There's been numerous reasons for that, including workloads, but we had a good discussion around the table about where the roadblocks are, how we feed those up, and the agencies all committed to get behind that work programme, and we'll bring back a full update to the next Joint Committee in November. We also had a very good discussion about the Francis Joseph Waiho River flooding hazard and the response to NEMA. Very, very thorough discussion about how the various agencies are all behind and willing to help support that vital piece of work, and there's an update on the agenda today. Obviously, we'll be talking more about that later. We touched on the recent exercise that was held in Westport, exercise Whakatahi, which was the desktop evacuation exercise for Westport, testing the recently developed plan which came out of the Resilient Westport work. We had a really good attendance at that evacuation exercise, 40 participants from within the council itself, the West Coast Emergency Management Team, Regional Council, NEMA. It was good to have the NEMA folk there to observe, and a range of partner agencies as well, including Bathurst Mining. And I think that exercise really highlighted the fact that councils can't do this on their own. This is about working with partnership agencies, getting that community support to deliver good outcomes for communities. We're working through the feedback. There were some really good valuable insights into how the agencies work together and the decision-making processes. More importantly, though, it highlighted where some key improvement areas were required, and the team are working through those areas to make sure we're better and better each time we do it. We had an update from NEMA. We talked a little bit about the progress on the emergency management bill, and there'll be a further update today from Mike. KEG welcome those proposed changes, but we are remaining concerned about the financial burden on communities. But as I said before, we'll work that through as part of our long-term plan. These are really important things that we need to focus on. Just finally, a plug, we have the upcoming South Island Emergency Management Conference, the last day of September through to the 1st of October. That's an exciting piece of work the team are working on and leading. So that was all I had from the chair's update. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions, please? No?
Thank you.
Thank you. So we will just look for somebody to receive the report from Simon, thanks. Thank you, Mick Gibson. Chair Smith, thank you everybody for that. Right, moving on to Friends Joseph, Waiho River flooding hazard response to correspondence from NEMA, and we'll hand over to Claire, please.
Thank you, Chair, and kia ora koutou, everybody. So just to give you a bit of an overview about this report. So in terms of the background, so back in April, the Joint Committee Chair received a letter from John Price, who is the Deputy Chief Executive for NEMA, questioning us in terms of the Joint Committee around our awareness and preparedness and what the Joint Committee's position is regarding the Friends Joseph Waiho flood risk. So that was back in April. When Joint Committee last met in May, the committee agreed that a position be worked up in response to the letter from John Price. At that discussion in May, a couple of key points were talked about. They were that there was the willingness to accept support from NEMA for the work around Franz Joseph, including the evacuation arrangements. Since the May paper and the May committee meeting, we have developed a position piece on the Franz Joseph River hazard, which is attached to this report. The conclusions in that attached position piece are that NEMA support us to exercise current evacuation and other response arrangements so that they are effective and can continue to build on resilience. Secondly, to inform the West Coast Emergency Management Joint Committee's responsibilities and role in long-term adaptation planning alongside those of other councils and central government. And thirdly, advocate across local and central government to support Western District Council and master adaptation planning. So those are the three recommendations that you'll find at the back of the report. The recommendation for this committee is to endorse the Franz Joseph Waiho hazard position piece attached to the report and make that as a response to John Price, the Deputy Chief Executive for NEMA, as a response to his letter to the committee in April. And the attachments are, attachment 1 is the original letter from John Price back on the 22nd of April, and then following that is the 8-page position piece suggested for as the response from this joint committee. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Claire, for that. And It's good to see that we've finally worked up that paper for Franz Joseph. There's been a lot of talk about risk in that community, but it has been unfortunate that we've taken that letter to put this together, but I'm very grateful to you and the team for putting together what you have for them. My question on that is, when can we expect to see that work program developed, ready for implementation with the community?
Okay, so just to clarify the question, is this with regards to evacuation arrangements?
With regards to everything that's in this report, that's reflective to that community when it talks about, you know, risk management, mitigation, it talks about risk to life, severity of risk.
Yeah, yes. So we have already put through the committee the draft evacuation plan for Franz Joseph, so that went through this committee back in February this year, and that was supported. So that's the piece of work that we currently have underway and will be testing with all of the community and agencies. So that's the piece that we are continuing to work through. That's the main sort of focus of the work of my team, along with partnering with Western District Council. The broader piece of work, I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to.
Well, with what was in John's letter, which has really sort of inspired this paper to be written.
Yeah.
I would have thought that at some stage there would have been a consideration of working with that community, advising them of this paper and the work, what it means, and how that will be integrated into their community for their management. Because I mean, they're the first responders to an event until everybody else gets there.
Yeah. So through.
Sorry, through the chair. Just the large part of the work, as I understand it, in terms of this paper, other than the work that obviously is specifically undertaken by Claire and her team, is really Western District Council work, as I understand it, and as I read through this paper.
You mean as far as integrating a civil defence evacuation plan with the community falls with
particularly with the adaptation side of the work in this paper. So I just wanted to make it clear that your question, Helen, was specific to the role that Claire and her team will be playing. Is it specific just?
Well, I mean, we've got the paper, but there will be a work program come from that. So it's really just sort of getting our heads around what that work program looks like, because this will be the same. This paper will be the same should we have a disaster anywhere else or a situation anywhere else. Would we worked off this model? So there will be a work stream. We can't just write a paper and then not have a work program from that paper.
I would have thought that part of that work stream would be developed by Western District Council in terms of the responsibilities it has as part of the adaptation and future planning in terms of that.
I'm talking about civil defence matters. So we were talking about the river management, because this is all focused on river management and the risk from that to the community. We're talking about evacuation programs, and I know that we're part of that. That's what I'm asking is at what stage, because we've got a community down there that is aware of this work, but they haven't had a conversation. There hasn't been a conversation held with them. At some stage, this work's got to be integrated into that community.
Oh, that's fine, as long as it is a question that's specific to the work of Claire.
Madam Chair, I wonder if I could comment as the Chief Executive that's responsible for the oversight of the Civil Defence Group and their activities and their mandates and what they have to do. Firstly, I just want to touch on the evacuation plan and just remind everybody where that's at. So the evacuation plan has been drafted by the group only, without virtually any involvement from Western District Council to date. It is highly modelled on the evacuation plan that was developed in Westport as part of the Resilient Westport work. That has now been adopted by the Joint Committee formally at a previous meeting, and in that adoption, in the recommendation, it says this draft plan has now been given to Western District Council to exercise, adopt and train inside its EOC, and with the support of the EMO, but led by Western District Council, has to now go and deal with the community groups down at Franz to actually socialise that. That was all in that paper. So it's not on the group to do that step, which was adopted in that previous paper.
Sorry, through the chair. I'd just like to correct a little bit of the consideration. I think Western District Council and our staff have been working with Claire's team in the development of this paper, and in the sense that we've been supportive. Definitely the team has been pulling the paper together. In terms of where we need to go, which I think is correct, that Western District Council will be working with the communities and with Claire's team as that paper as the plan gets rolled out. And I believe that at our last KEG meeting, there was a discussion about how we could socialise this with communities, because it hasn't been, while it's been worked up with some members of the community, I think there was some discussion about could we do it on a wider lens, which we all agreed would be done. So I don't think we're disagreeing with how it's going to be done. I think, Nilesh, what you're asking for is there a time frame for this to be undertaken so it's recorded here?
It is, because it's not just Western District Council or Clare, it's also the community need to be updated and kept in the loop as far as regional council and the river threat that's there, because with just having been down there with meetings with the community, there's a void of information and they see themselves as vulnerable with that. We can have a civil defence plan, but there's also the discussion of the river, which is held with the joint river committee meetings. So we just need to tie all the communications, all the information together to ensure that we deliver the right information collaboratively together to keep that community informed, just as Border would need as well.
Through the chair, if I just might add a comment. I wonder if we're getting, so there are two products that are currently on the table. There's the evacuation plan, which is quite separate from the report that's in the meeting papers. The evacuation plan's already been worked through to a degree with Western District Council, thank you, and also with a range of community over quite a period of time. And that evacuation plan, as you've already seen, went through this committee in February this year. So we are continuing to progress that piece of work around exercising, testing that evacuation plan. The position piece here is a completely different output. The position pieces talks to what the committee's view is of that overall hazard around Franz Joseph and what the overall or the long-term arrangements are as a result of that hazard. So yes, it does include evacuation planning, but that's only one part of it. There's all this other work that we flag and have requested support from NEMA around. And the position piece, which is on the table today, has not been circulated wider than this. So so this is the first time that this committee has had, an opportunity to discuss the position piece. So it's quite separate from the evacuation arrangements. I just wonder if there's a bit of confusion around those two quite separate pieces of work. We take complete ownership alongside with Western District Council as appropriate around continuing to refine, publicise, socialise the evacuation arrangements, which is over here, quite separate to what we're talking about here, which is what is the committee's position around the overarching hazard around Franz Joseph. So I just wonder if there's, if we're sort of talking a bit cross-wired on this particular topic.
Right, thank you. What I might suggest is that we collectively put a work program together, because we've got to socialise the evacuation program with the community, but also when we're leading this paper of understanding the severity of risk. And that's something that needs to be socialised with the community as well, because you need to have that up front to really put in place the evacuation program. They need to understand the severity of risk, and that needs to be a community-wide conversation. So I'd just like to see these pulled together and taken to the community, so the community are on board and walking the same pathway.
And can I ask, Madam Chair, are you expecting the group to do that through Claire's team, are you? Is that what you're?
No, I think it's a position for the three of us, because I think the regional council need to go there and have not just a meeting with the Joint River Committee meeting, but with the community to advise them on the severity of risk, because in behind that then sits the evacuation plan and program.
Yeah, can I make a comment? And I think this is what you're saying anyway, and I quite agree. The Joint Committee of the Franz Joseph Rating District is solely set up for the purposes of administering, maintaining, and any enhancements to the flood protection assets. We're talking about master planning, we're talking about civil defence arrangements. That is not their in their terms of reference. They are a party and need to be informed of some of those things, but that is what you're talking about, is a far wider conversation with the whole of the community, and not through that joint committee that is set up just to look after the flood banks.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
great.
But I'm just trying to understand that wider engagement with the community, the exercising of the plan, and all those sorts of things. It's really important to understand if you have an expectation, Madam Chair, that the group is going to do all of that, or who's leading it, where's the work being led from, who's organising it all. That's the key. And if I go to what happened in Westport with their evacuation plan, the Buller District Council, through its EOC, took control of that plan. They reviewed it, their council adopted it, they then exercised it as Buller District Council, running its own EOC, and then they're going through a lessons learned. And that's the outstanding piece, some of that has to happen there in terms of the Franz Joseph. And it was highly socialised with the community as well.
And that's the point I'm making. That it doesn't matter whether it's Buller, Franz, Grey, or Hokitika. We've got to have the community on board with these. So we need to socialise this. I think now is the right time to socialise the risk and what's in place to manage should there be a situation, and that involves all three of us. I'm not talking about something high tech, I'm just purely talking about going to the community and bringing them collectively up to speed with this.
And I'm talking about, Madam Chair, who leads that piece of work. And in the my contention is that's Western District Council has to lead that piece of work with the support of the group, but Western lead it.
I'm happy to do that. I'm not talking about anything high tech. I'm just talking about showing the community some respect and getting them on board and bringing them with us with this, so they understand the severity of risk that Regional Council is putting out there. Claire can update on the work that's been done towards this whole plan, and then the engagement and implementation of the evacuation program. It makes it easier for her to do that. And then we can also see what other gaps we've got to fill from our council's perspective. I don't think going to them with a finite situation saying this is it, this is how it's going to rock is necessarily the right way to do it. I'd like to see this socialised up front. And I think potentially Buller would have benefited in hindsight from that as well if we'd known. We can never foreread these situations, but let's learn from what we've got. If Buller had been socialised with something in a program like this beforehand, it may have made a difference, we don't know. It's one of those things. Yep.
Through the chair, can I just confirm that our responsibility, our being West Coast Emergency Management Office, which is myself and the team, have in our current work program to exercise and test the Franz Joseph evacuation plan. But I do want to emphasise to the committee that that is still only one element in isolation of understanding the current risk and the future risk to that community, and what the long-term plan is around things like a master plan. So again, we are only one aspect of what we can share and communicate to the community, and there's that other wider piece around the long-term future of that community, how the hazard will be, will be managed. That's a conversation that we don't have a mandate to lead, and so there will only be so much that we can do in terms of socialising, exercising the evacuation plan. Won't cover all of the aspects that we are referring to in the position piece that has been drafted for your consideration. So I just want to
I
emphasise
appreciate what you're
that
saying
point.
there. And we're happy to lead going down there. But I think it's high time that we brought the community along with us and advise them of the work that's being done, the severity of the risk for the regional council. I'm happy to repeat what I've been repeating to the community as far as the work that we're doing for Future Friends, and then we can introduce the evacuation program and the work that you're doing, because to enable that work that you've got to follow through with, you've got to have that initial conversation with them, and this is that opportunity. They need to understand the risks at hand to be able to buy into the work you've got to do, Claire, and that's what worries me the most. Without that comprehension of the wider picture, you won't get as full a cooperation from the community as what you need. I'm happy to organise that and circulate that within the different entities, and we'll proceed down to the community in the time that suits everybody. So with that, is there any other questions or points to be raised for Claire with that report?
Who owns it? I wonder if I could butt in there. I understand it to a certain extent. It depends on the size of the eventual emergency. If the emergency is a locally declared emergency, then the local council, in this case Western, would be running it, and the local controller would be in charge. But if it gets bigger, then it switches over to a regional emergency, and then the regional controller takes over. So then the regional council gets involved. So it depends to a certain extent on the magnitude of what the emergency becomes, whether it starts off as a local emergency and being able to be handled by the local controller, versus to the stage and the sort of situation I imagine you might get if it was in the middle of the tourist season and you had hundreds or maybe more people that overwhelm it from a local emergency to becoming a regional emergency. So if you're going to do an exercise, then both local and regional councils need to be involved in the whole practice exercise and evacuation procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. If there's nothing further for Claire with that report, can I just have somebody please receive the report? I'll move it. Thank you. Dickinson, second.
Is it the report's being endorsed and that the chair, is it? I think it's being endorsed.
Yes, sorry, endorsement of the report. Lee Gibson. Chair Smith, happy to second, thank you. In favour with that? Right, thank you. Moving on to West Coast Emergency Management Regional Manager Report, and again, hand over to Claire, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody. So this report has a number of different sections in it. I won't go through them each in detail, but really happy to answer any any questions that come through from the committee, and there are a number of aspects that have been raised earlier in the meeting from the chair of the coordinating executive group. Thank you, Simon. So I'll just take you very briefly through this report. In terms of activation, so we've had a fairly quiet period in terms of activations over the last quarter. Obviously, there was some activity around the large earthquake that occurred down south on the 16th of July, and there was also a bit of activity around the severe wind, particularly for south Westland in early July. I just want to flag too that we are continuing to await the royal assent of the new emergency management bill, which we expect should occur any week now. And so there are obviously a number of changes that we will need to consider going forward when and if that becomes our new act. Just want to advise the committee that I met last week with my colleagues across the country around what the key areas are and implications are for the bill, and so I'll be able to bring that piece of work back when we have a coordinating executive group workshop later in September. But that piece of work currently is continuing to track as is intended, all going to plan. Group work plan update, just an update there that we are working to get that the plan to the Minister's office, and Chair Lashow will work with you on a letter as a cover letter before we submit that to the Minister for Emergency Management. And once it's at the Minister's office, it has a 20 working day turnaround. In terms of the budget, there's a very short section there. The main point around that is that all of the councils are going to have a bit of a shared planning session around what aspects are going into current long-term plans that relate to emergency management. So we're hoping to have that workshop later in September as well. For obvious reasons, it's good to be able to share what our combined thinking is around long-term plan arrangements and whether or not we can get some, collaboration or cooperation across all of the 4 councils around long-term planning. And I also mentioned in the report around the workshop that I've been referring to, which is hopefully picks up on a number of aspects around the LTP, but also around the project plans that were referred to earlier in the meeting, which is enabling us to pull out and understand a lot more about what the different aspects are in our current work program. So that was the piece of work that Simon referred to earlier, which will really help to give our coordinating executive group a lot clearer understanding about the performance of the group and where the different activities are in terms of if they're on track or off track, etc. NEMA Resilience Fund, so again, just to advise you that we had 2 of our applications were successful, so we're very grateful about that and have already commenced work on both of those pieces of work. So we've got the West Coast Fuel Plan, which is underway, so that's to update the existing fuel plan that we have, which was from April 2022, and also to enhance the work that we did around Westport, around business continuity planning. So we quite excited about those two pieces of work. Again, as Simon mentioned earlier, we have the South Island Emergency Management Conference coming up on the 30th of September and the 1st of October. So we're really gearing up for that, which will be a big opportunity for us to showcase the work, not only on the West Coast region, but other parts of the South Island as well. So we're looking forward to that coming up shortly. Also just want to let the committee know that there's also been a large amount of work around developing a common operating picture for us, for the region. So this is a piece of work which we've also been able to work from the Resilient Westport program. So one of the elements of that program was around how we enhance our digital response capability in a response. So that has enabled us to look at what we refer to as a common operating picture. So essentially that's a picture that we have of where everything is happening around the response. So it gives us really good intel and oversight about what the current impact is of whatever event has happened. And we are able to utilise other great examples which currently operate around other parts of the country as well. So we're well underway with that piece of work and hoping to have a prototype to be able to test and look at later this year. So that's a common operating picture. And finally, in my report, there's just some headlines around the final closeout of the Resilient Westport program. So there's a number of aspects there which you can read through. I just want to flag that there were a couple of items that carried over into this current financial year that includes the work that I just referred to around the common operating picture, but there was also a couple of other aspects that have now been completed, including the launch of the Westport network, which took place on the 23rd of July, which was a great show of support from the local private sector and businesses in Westport. The recommendation here is to receive the report and also to agree that a letter of thanks is sent to NEMA as a result of our two successful NEMA Resilience Fund applications. No attachments to this report. Happy to answer any questions, and there is quite a bit in there I do appreciate, so any questions about any aspect.
Just around the Resilient Westport project, there's more funding. Has there been funding applied for to support with grants as well? Like if they've had a lot of support through this project and they've had funding and so forth, has there been any funding applied for by Civil Defence for grants in these sorts of manners?
Through the chair, no, we have not applied for any funding. So just to clarify, the funding for Resilient Westport was a large package of central government funding, around 28 million. So that included a whole raft of initiatives and activities. The work that we have been able to secure under Resilient Westport is only a small fraction of that program of works. There isn't anything that currently is an avenue for ongoing or additional funding to support the work in France. However, as is pointed out in the position piece, which we've just referred to earlier in the agenda, we are looking for support from NEMA in terms of what other support we may be able to access through central government avenues. So that is one of the aspects that we put into the position piece. Other than that, the NEMA Resilience Fund application is something quite separate from the funding that we were able to work with through Resilient Westport. You know, they are two quite separate funding streams. But in answer to your question, no, we have not applied for any additional funding.
Madam Chair, I wonder if I could just ask a question, clarification there. Claire, I thought we had a NEMA grant that funded the work to extend the Westport evacuation plan into the other floodplains, including France. Is my memory
Yes,
failing me there?
no, that's correct.
So the answer to the question is yes, we have had external money. Because you said
we
no.
have had,
Yes,
we
thank you.
have had. Absolutely, apologies if that wasn't clear. So that was the year 2024-25 when we did have some additional funding through the support from NEMA to pull down the evacuation arrangements that we did for Westport into both Grey, Hokitika and Franz Joseph. So that's the piece of work that we've been able to latch on to enable to provide that evacuation planning, which is currently on the table. Without that, we would have been further behind in terms of being able to develop that robust evacuation plan. So you're right that we have had support in the past.
Thank you for clarifying that, Claire. Any further questions for Claire? The recommendation is that the committee receive the report and agree a letter of thanks sent from the Joint Committee Chair to NEMA to acknowledge the two successful West Coast Resilience Fund applications. I'll move on second, please. Chair Smith, second Chair Lee Gibson, thank you. In favour with that, is it's a bit complicated, doesn't it? Just the three. All right, moving on to the NEMA update.
Thank you.
Thanks, and I'll hand over to you in Sean's absence.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take my report as read. We are still anticipating the bill to be passed in this legislative term, noting that I think there's not many sitting days left until the end of September. But we are creeping up the agenda. We were 11, but we got to 8 in the break and we would have paper yesterday. So looking forward to that, but I'm happy to take any questions. And also congratulations on the Resilience Fund applications. Yeah, it's good to see.
Any questions? I'm quite intrigued on the warning systems, I must say.
In which respect?
Well, in the phasing in of the national warning system, just on how the
Yes, as part of the MSOS program,
Yeah.
absolutely, it's a priority for them to upgrade and update that as part of the funding of the MSOS program. And business case, there's 3 business cases that have been approved for funding, and that is one of them.
It's just very interesting to see how the plan of management is for the coast, being that from one end to the other, you can have different emergency situations at various places and how that would be managed with the warning system.
I can't comment on what the local arrangements might be. You haven't heard anything specific to the coast?
No.
No.
I guess that will come as
As it evolves, yeah.
It would just be good to have those updates and know how this is going to work for us. How this program is going to work for us.
What I can say about MSOS is there's a number of working groups being set up. I think there's about 5 around data policy, a number of platforms, and that is working with local governments. I think we can anticipate chief executives of councils will be asked for their support as local authorities to ensure that that NEMA gets the build right. So there will be direct engagement with local authorities, not just CDM groups. So I think chief executives can anticipate a letter.
Yeah. And through the chair, just want to just to note that there was 2 days of workshops a couple of weeks ago where the team from NEMA were on the coast and were able to provide some really good overarching understanding about what's the different aspects are of that piece of work. It is a massive piece of work which includes not only the warning system but also the whole digital operational functioning of how we across the country respond to an emergency. So it does include things like what I referred to earlier around the common operating picture. That's also a big element of that work as well. But yeah, I just wanted to make that point because that did involve representation from each of the TAs who were able to take part in that.
Any further questions? Clarification? No. So the recommendation is that the West Coast Emergency Management Joint Committee receive the report. Thank you, Mayor Gibson. Chair Smith, thank you. Are there any other matters arising before we close off this morning's meeting? No? All right, I will at 10:17 declare the meeting closed. Pause and apologies, sorry, I can't read this come through. So meeting closed.